Hello. Today, let's talk about your identity. The text before us is Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 through 30. Introduction. By the year of his death, in AD 155, Pastor Polycarp was 86 years old. He was the bishop of Smyrna, a city in what is now Turkey. And Polycarp was probably the last surviving person to have known an apostle of Christ. Personally, he had been a protege of the beloved apostle John. The early church had often faced persecution. In the middle of the 2nd century, Polycarp was charged with the crime of atheism. That meant that he would not worship Caesar as a god. For that reason, he was called an atheist by the Roman proconsul and was sentenced to death. But Polycarp was a kind, gentle, and amiable old man, and it seemed that no one really wanted to kill him. What follows is an excerpt of an account written by an eyewitness. It recounts the dialogue that Polycarp had with the proconsul who was responsible for his martyrdom. The proconsul urged him harder. "Take the oath, and I'll let you go. Curse Christ. For 86 years I have served him, and he never did me any wrong," said Polycarp. "How can I blaspheme my king who saved me?" When the proconsul kept insisting, "Swear by the divine power of Caesar," Polycarp answered, "If you vainly suppose that I will swear by the divine power of Caesar, as you say, and if you pretend that you do not know who I am, then listen plainly. I am a Christian, and if you wish to learn the Christian message, arrange a meeting and give me a hearing." "I have wild animals," the proconsul said. "I'll throw you to them unless you change your mind." "Call them in," Polycarp replied, "for we're not allowed to change from something better to something worse." "Scorn the wild beasts. I'll have you burned alive if you do not change your mind." Polycarp said, "You threaten with fire that for a short time burns and is soon quenched. You do not know about the fire of the coming judgment and eternal punishment that awaits the wicked. But why are you waiting? Come, do what you will." The eyewitness continued, "Polycarp radiated courage and joy as he said these things and many other things. Not only did his face show no sign of distress, it was so full of grace that the proconsul was astonished. And he sent his herald into the middle of the arena 3 times to announce, 'Polycarp has declared that he is a Christian.'" Beloved, today's gospel lesson is a parable that Jesus told about a man who had an identity crisis. Polycarp knew his identity. He was a Christian. But the fellow in the parable did not know who he was, and he did not know whose he was, because he did not know his master or himself. He was a truly tragic figure. Point 1, the master's generosity. Jesus begins the parable by telling us about a most wise and generous master. He brought his servants together, and he entrusted his possessions to them. He gave each of them a gift. To one he gave 5 talents, to the next he gave 2 talents, to the last he gave 1 talent. Now, here's the surprise. A talent is a measure of weight, 75 pounds to be precise. So, to the first servant, the master gave 375 pounds of what I suspect was gold, approximately $12 million worth. The second servant, to him the master gave 150 pounds of gold, approximately $5 million worth, and to the third servant the master gave 75 pounds of gold, approximately $2.4 million worth. The first point that Jesus is making is obvious. This master is incredibly gracious. He's glad to share his precious possessions and entrust them and their management into the hands of his servants. Each one is given more value than he can possibly imagine. The second point is that the master also is wise enough to know the ability of each one of his servants, so he entrusts the correct amount into the hands of each one. In that way, they each have enough to become a great success, but not so much that they become a great failure. The master has not given one less because he dislikes him more than the other, but because the master is wise and fair to them all. Finally, Jesus is showing us that the master made sure that the servants never needed to worry what they must do in order to get a great gift, but instead what they could do with the great gift that they already had been given. Point 2, the servant's response. The parable continues with each of the servants going away to manage the treasures that they each had been given. Presumably by now, each one has already learned that his master is by nature kind and generous, for the master has given them the chance of a lifetime, entrusting them with incredible wealth and truly incredible opportunity. They can trust their master. Also, it's clear that their master trusts them. He looks upon them with confidence, believing that they will do their best to keep the faith that he has entrusted to them. They will use their varied abilities and strengths to bring blessing to their master, even as their master has blessed each of them. But you remember the parable that Jesus taught. He explained that the one servant traded and made 5 more talents, and the next servant gained 2 more talents. The third servant did not act accordingly. Jesus draws our eye to that third servant so that we will notice his unwillingness to use his gift. The third servant becomes the focus of our attention because he literally buries his gift. He hides his master's money. When the master returns, each servant comes to present the master with the results of his efforts. The first servant has made 5 more talents. The second servant has made 2 more talents. But the third servant, well, he has a different response. He has not used his gift at all. He has not increased it in the least, but notice, he does not apologize. He does not assume any responsibility, nor any blame for his lack of effort. Instead, he actually blames his master. Master, I knew you to be a hard man. Really? I don't think we've seen that. In fact, we've seen just the opposite. The master has been kind and generous. But the third servant continues. Well, I was afraid. I went away and hid your talent in the ground. See? Here. You have what's yours. It's almost as if the third servant is saying, the blame is not mine. The blame is yours. It's your fault that I did nothing with it. I imagine the master thinking, now wait a minute. If I'm so scary, why are you speaking to me with such disrespect? And if I'm such a hard master, why did you not at least invest my gift so that I would receive some interest? No, you see, I think something more is going on here. Point 3, lost identity. A story is told of a young man who got involved with drugs. Then he became associated with some fellows who were stealing in order to pay for their drugs. The young man fell in with them, and when they were caught, he was sent to prison too. After his sentence was served and he was released, he had no idea where he would go or what he would do. But a storekeeper in the town offered him a job. Wow! What a gift! He could work in the store as a stock clerk, and after a number of years, the young man had proven himself to be so trustworthy, he had become the assistant manager of the store. But then, the unthinkable happened. The store was robbed. The safe was broken, and a whole week's profit was stolen. The young man thought he would surely be accused, and after all, he had been a thief himself. He had broken safes. He had stolen money. He was so scared and so angry and so confused, he just decided to run away. But the storekeeper spoke to him. No. Stay here. Wait it out. I will stand with you. Everything will be all right. It was a terribly long week, but eventually the real thieves were caught, and the young man breathed a huge sigh of relief. The shopkeeper said to him, I am so glad that you did not run away. And the young man said, How could I? I remember the gift that you gave me when you first hired me. You're the only one who has ever trusted me. In much the same way, the first two servants in the parable acted faithfully because of their master's trust in them. They knew who they were because they knew whose they were. They had a sure and strong identity because of the gifts and because of the trust that their master had given to them. But you see, I think that the third servant never really knew his master. He had a false understanding of his master's identity, and the third servant had a false understanding of his own identity. He rejected his master and ultimately was removed from the master's presence. Conclusion. In the year 155 AD, a pastor named Polycarp was martyred for his faith. Polycarp had no doubt about his identity. He knew who he was because he knew whose he was. I am a Christian, he boldly declared. I believe in Jesus Christ. Now, if you want to learn more, just ask me a question. If you want me to die for my faith, then bring out the lions. Today, Jesus taught us about another man, one who was unsure about his master and unsure about himself. His identity was uncertain. He did not trust his master. He did not trust himself. Here is the meaning of the parable. This is a story about salvation. Jesus teaches that salvation is not a question about what you must do to get the gift. It is a question of what you will do with the gift you already have been given. And it's not about the question, have you done enough? But instead, have you done anything? Do you serve because you trust the master who trusted you? Or do you fear and hate the master and refuse to serve him at all? Jeffrey Gibbs, in his wonderful commentary, the Concordia commentary on Matthew, suggests an alternate ending to this parable. The first servant came to the master, and he said, Lord, you entrusted me with 5 talents, and I have gained you 5 more. But Lord, there is so much more I could have done. I know, child, said the master, but well done, good and faithful servant. Enter the joy of your master. The next servant came forward and he said, Lord, you entrusted me with 2 talents and I have gained 2 more, but Lord, I was tempted and foolish and could have done so much better. I know, child. I remember every time that you failed, said the master. But well done, good and faithful servant. Enter the joy of your master. If only the third servant had confessed his weakness and trusted his master, if only his identity had been secure in the trust and the love that his master had for him. The parable teaches that you already have received weighty gifts from God. You have received forgiveness and mercy, life and love, and salvation by grace through faith. Your identity is secure because it was given to you as a gift by the one who loves you and saves you. Because of his cross and his death and his resurrection for you, your salvation is never based upon how much you do, but is based upon all that he has already done for you. So you respond with faith and trust in the one who has entrusted his gifts of grace to you. Why? Because you are a Christian, and that is your identity. Amen.